Welcome. It has just gone 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Wednesday, 6th of December, and you are watching episode 114 of Regional Wrap. Regional Wrap, providing an insight on the issues affecting regional Australia and giving a voice to regional residents. My name is Bill Bates, and joining me on this episode, regional communities versus renewable juggernauts are my guests Bill Stinson and Grant Piper. Bill gained a Bachelor of Applied Science in Building from the University of Technology, Sydney, and has had a successful 4-decade career in building consultancy, project management, facilities management, and constructions management. About 3 years ago, with the continuing demonisation of carbon dioxide, Bill became interested in the type of energy generation needed for Australia to reduce emissions. Bill utilised his professional project management expertise to research the competing energy generation propositions, in particular in the relations of the complete life cycle of each, their costs and benefits. This research has informedly shaped his view to the pathway Australia should pursue to reduce carbon dioxide emissions. Grant was born on the family farm near the Upper Hunter township of Casilius, New South Wales. Like many of his generation, he realised life opportunities lay far from his doorstep. Grant gained his aeronautical engineering qualifications from the University of New South Wales and went on to be a pilot in the RAF for some 10 years, primarily flying the workhorse that was the C-130 Hercules. He returned to farming some 25 years ago, but has maintained his connection with flying through participation in aerobatic flying and has been the president of Australian Aerobatic Club. Grant is the president of the Uarbry Tongy Lane Alliance Incorporated, a grassroots community group opposed to the spread of industrial-scale wind turbine complexes across the regional landscape. He is also the chair of the National Rational Energy Network. Welcome, Bill and Grant.
Good evening.
Thanks, Bill.
Well, welcome, gentlemen. The other week I had the Libertarian member on from New South Wales talking about the processes within New South Wales. And he also spoke at the Reckless Renewables rally last Thursday. And I thought I'd get you on the show this week to sort of give us a bit of a rundown on the event and what happened there, and also the connections that were made in going and what's going to happen going forward.
I'll kick off, Bill, will I?
Yep.
John Ruddick spoke, and we had a bunch of community speakers as well from the coastal groups and then the regional areas. We had the Queenslanders come down. Barnaby spoke. Alan Jones spoke. Ian Plimer was lined up, but he had to cancel due work. And then we had Craig Kelly also spoke, and Tanya Mahalik, One Nation, and John Bonaziak from Shooters, Fishers, Farmers. And out of those, One Nation and Shooters, Fishers were the only state parties that went to the last state election in New South Wales with a no renewables policy. I don't know where do we go from here. I mean, it was a good day. It was good to catch up. I mean, it was about the first time where I think we had 90% of the NREN committee physically in one place. Everything's been done over the phone and on the internet up till this point. So it was good to actually meet people in the flesh for the first time. And that goes for a lot of the people that we've been dealing with when we're organising the rally. You know, we spent a lot of time organising, but it was good to actually meet them and listen to their story. And everyone has a similar story, and we're just we want things to change. The way we're being treated is always the first thing that comes up, and then you get into all the detail. But it's a starting point, and it was good to see everyone there. And hopefully we, if we unite, we can get changes made, significant changes made.
I think the interesting thing is, for every renewables project, there's a a community group opposed to it. From Cairns to Cape Otway, there must be 50, maybe even 100 groups by now that have got issues with the project in their locality. Where it doesn't matter whether it's renewables and in the respect to pumped hydro, a wind farm or a solar farm, or transmission lines. So that whole plethora of activities that are required for the introduction of renewables has certainly raised a huge number of communities protesting about it or trying to find out what the hell's going on. Because one of the things we don't seem to get is how we don't have an overall costing of this thing. Everyone, the people, the proponents of it keep saying how wonderful this is going to be. We got to get all this cheap energy, the sun's free, the wind's free, and it's got to be some sort of nirvana. But the last thing they want to talk about is cost. So, Bill, with your research in that, where do we stand, and how do we get the information out to people? What's involved in the cost, and how much what's the scale of renewables going to be to deliver this nirvana?
Well, Bill, what we've done, we've at the moment got 72 community groups that are connected, and there's about 100 projects that they are currently protesting against. Now, what we've done is to link all these community groups up. Before, they were feeling that they were alone. There was nobody listening to them. Now they can communicate through us with each other. And what we do is we provide them with information as to where particular submissions are. So we start to rally the troops to get objections for those submissions. And one of the guys, a bloke named Bob King, he every week sends out a list of the projects and the dates when submissions are due. I suppose what we're up against is politicians who are pushing ideology and not reality. We had a situation last week in New South Wales where they passed the Climate Change Act, Net Zero Act, in the New South Wales Parliament. It was passed unanimously, and that obviously meant that the Liberal Party and the National Party supported it. And in that particular act, it referred to the Paris Agreement and the importance of decreasing emissions. But the particular clause they quoted, they didn't quote the full clause, because the full clause says that you shouldn't do this if there is a threat to food production. Now, straight away, if that particular part of the Paris Agreement was adhered to, then a lot of these projects wouldn't be going ahead. The simple reason that they're taking up prime agricultural land for solar, high voltage transmission lines are going through farming and grazing properties, so it reduces the capability of people to farm and grazing on those properties because of the high voltage transmission lines. So you have to ask the question, why are the politicians doing this? I suppose the other question to be asked is, why aren't they working to lift the prohibition on nuclear energy? Now, I was at a meeting last Monday night, a Liberal Party meeting, and there is now a push with the Federal Liberal Party to put out their policy to support nuclear energy and to lift the prohibition on nuclear energy. Now, of itself, that won't... it'll be a game changer, not a significant game changer, but the issue with that is that there are a lot of people who would like to use this nuclear energy generation. David Littleproud was on Andrew Bolt the other evening, and he said that he'd been speaking to one of the operators of a coal mine in Queensland who wanted to use a small modular reactor to provide power for that particular mine. So that there is a push within the coalition, and I suggest that in the not too distant future there'll be a policy coming out that includes the lifting of the prohibition on nuclear energy.
Yeah, well, we've also got COP28 on at the moment. I think the first day, I think the Saudi president of the current COP sort of threw a cat amongst the pigeons and pushed for nuclear energy. He also sort of suggested, well, you're never going to get rid of fossil fuels, because if you do, you're going to head back to the cave. So that must have caused a lot of flux over there. And I understand that there was an agreement signed at least by 30 countries to increase nuclear power by threefold by 2050. But our Mr. Bowen isn't having a bar of that, because our country is blessed with other geological and space assets that we can't ignore.
Well, it just goes to show how much of a fool he is, because the rest of the world, they're turning to nuclear. They've tried the experiment with renewables and it's failed. I mean, you can't have environmentally destructive, unreliable, intermittent energy when you need a generation capability that supports a first world country. It's the reason why our manufacturing is disappearing overseas. And it won't be too long before companies like Tomago move their operations overseas. The aluminium production in Australia, because the cost of energy is going up and it's unreliable. What they're doing now with Tomago is that when they require power in Sydney from about 4:30 to 9 o'clock at night, they're paying Tomago to load shed. In other words, to slow down the pot lines, so they're not using as much electricity. Now, the problem with that is if the electricity goes off and the pot lines freeze up, then good luck. That's going to be millions and millions of dollars just down the drain.
Yeah, well, like with the aluminium smelters, you can drop the furnace down a bit, but you've got to keep the whole thing liquefied. But gee whiz, if you actually get a power outage and those pots solidify, well, that's the end of your operation for that furnace and pot line for some time, like ever. Just back to you, as a farmer, up in our area, we see people complaining in regards to wind farms in sort of forest areas type things, or things that have got a natural habitat value, even though some parts of it are been used in the past for farming. Then we go down further south, you get down towards Mackay, and we've got the proposed pumped hydro system will actually flood a vast area of farmland. So down in your area, New South Wales, what's your farmers faced with in regards to what's happening on their property and how they'll be affected?
Yeah, well, where we are, we're in the Central West Arana Renewable Energy Zone, which is an area the state government's designated as prime for development, they call it. And where we are, we're on the Great Dividing Range as well here. We're one ridge west of the Great Dividing Range. We're only about 1,700 feet, but it's predominantly cleared, but it's undulating. And the ridges running sort of basically north-south down from the Liverpool Ranges are where they want to put these wind turbines around the town of Coolah. This is one example, but they're planning 330 turbines just around the township of Coolah and our district here, and in the ridge west of us. And then further west and south on the flatter country, there's, solar farms of, thousands of hectares planned, and there's 47 odd projects altogether and another 600 odd turbines planned at the moment. For the res, it was promulgated at 3.5 gigawatt, and they've put in to increase that to 4.5 and then 6, and then ultimately 8 or 9 gigawatt dispatchable with 20 gigawatt installed. And that's a massive amount of, I can't tell you how many wind turbines and solar panels that would be, but you need 25 square kilometres for about 850 megawatt of solar panels, I think. So it's a huge effect, and they admit themselves that it's going to change the region from predominantly agricultural to industrial, and they call it, chest pumped out, a modern day power station. So what's the effect on farming? Well, at the moment, it's to split the community. People like myself and my wife and other families that are affected by this and don't want to see it happen, are just working almost full time trying to get some traction and try and inform people of what's coming, because so many people are just, not engaged, or they're not aware of what's happening. And then when they do find out, they're generally pretty disgusted. And then it takes them a while, though, to realise the full scale of what the impact is. But what's happening now is just the thin edge of the wedge. I mean, in 5, 10, 15 years, if it goes ahead as they're saying, you won't recognise the place, and there will be a serious impact on food production. And again, what Bill said about, they adopted the Paris Agreement word for word virtually, except they chopped out the bit about except when it affects food production. Now, I'm a cynic, but how malevolent do you have to be in Parliament to chop that out? Now, who did that? Who is the staffer? Who is the person writing that made that decision? And who did they consult with? And did the minister or the premier, were they briefed on that, going, oh, sir, this is what we put forward as a climate change bill, I recommend it to you, but we've taken this section out because we don't think food production is important? Do the people that vote for this, do they actually know what they've done? Are they malevolent, or are they just ignorant? I don't know.
It'd be a competition on which one. But the scary part is the Liberal and the Labor are both in step with this sort of thing, and there's no one really from the major parties on side. The Nationals to a little bit, they've been a little bit resistant, and of course the minor parties, but overall, the massive voting bloc of the Liberals and the Labor with their Green allies just march on continuously. And like I say, they don't seem to recognise the problems that they're creating, and they don't seem to care. And that's sort of very worrying for people who have got a little bit of interest in politics, that they can be so blatantly, it's getting to be dishonest basically in regards going forward. But the other thing is
deceptive. Billy, if I just make this comment, it took me 10 minutes to find that out, because when I looked at the Act and it said, the Paris Agreement, and it referred to a particular clause, so I just went and downloaded the Paris Agreement and had a look at Article 2. And Article 2, it's there. It took me 10 minutes. So you can't tell me that these politicians didn't know that they were deleting that particular clause. And I suppose the thing that really is disgraceful is that the National Party members in New South Wales, who are supposed to be supporting the farmers, they supported this particular bill. And really, it is deceptive.
Yeah, so
it's par for the course over years of experience. I don't know. I can't speak for everyone, I suppose, but I've been fairly disenchanted with the Nationals since I don't know when now. I can't remember what tipped me over the edge. But you grow up in a rural conservative family, and so you grow up basically voting National, and to have your family move away from that and to change your mind, there's a whole host of reasons why over the decades you can probably say, well, that was another nail in the coffin.
But it's the Nationals who have moved away from the people. It's not the people who have moved away. It's the Nationals who have moved away.
Yes, and the Liberals as well. You speak to them, or speak to people associated, not Bill in particular, but others. I've had phone calls before the rallies going, oh, you can't have X speak there because you don't want to get branded a climate change denier. Even the Liberals aren't arguing on that platform anymore. You can't do that. And I said, well, you need to, and they were saying, oh, you got to get on board with the Liberals and support them. And I'm going, well, maybe the Liberals need to get on board with the people, and what we want, not, we're not just going to blindly follow. They need to do better.
In Queensland, it's even worse because the Nationals actually merged with the Liberals back in 2008. So we don't even have the benefit of having a national party that we can go beat around the ears and say, what the hell are you doing? Because really they're just all based in, they might call themselves nationals, like people like Canavan identify themselves as nationals, but realistically they are just part of the machinery that is the Brisbane-based LNP. So,
Billy,
and same with Uarbry, that's what he says, but he's not. He's actually a member of the LNP and controlled by the executive of the LNP in Brisbane.
But Billy, in July in Queensland, the LNP passed a motion calling for a moratorium on renewable energy projects. So what I've done is I got an e-petition, the House Representatives e-petition, which virtually replicated what the LNP had said in Queensland in relation to moratorium on renewable energy projects, and that was approved last Thursday. It went live last Thursday, and as of this morning, there are 1,100 people who had signed the petition. It goes through till the 28th of December. I mean, I'd like to think we could get it up to 5,000, and then that then makes another comment. It's somewhere else where we're starting to push against this thing. If I can just make one other comment, Dougal Saunders, who is the leader of the National Party in New South Wales, before he became a politician, was a radio announcer for the ABC.
well qualified.
You can't tell me that he hasn't been a bit affected by the ABC, the left-wing organisation. Now he's the leader of the National Party in New South Wales.
The differentiations is a bit like, you remember back, you bought a Toyota Lexus and it wasn't a Commodore, but that's where I see these parties, the major parties. I mean, we joke about it and people say they're the uni party, and I think that's pretty true. I mean, they're closer to each other than they are to us, and all of them are in the extreme centre. I mean, they claim to be in the centre, but if this is the centre, it's a very extreme centre. And as you say, it doesn't matter who's in power, the trajectory of policy seems to follow the same path.
With the organisation, the National Rational Renewables Energy Network.
All these tough ones.
Yeah. What's your connection with the people in Victoria? Because there seems to be a lot of, I get emails from someone called Jim Simpson. It's pretty prolific in putting out stuff about renewable projects and stuff like that. And we get the impression that down there, I think one area that's been earmarked as a hub of wind turbines, and that is the Moyne council area, local government area near Warrnambool. And reading some of the stuff there, if they keep rolling out the projects the way they intended, there'll be anything up to 800 at least 3.75 megawatt wind turbines in one local council area. Good grief.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure on all the details of that area, but yeah, so the council down there got on board very early and wanted that development to happen there. I gather a lot of the people there obviously aren't happy with it, but yeah, the council facilitated that very early on. And like a lot of these things, Victoria leads the nation in the wrong direction mostly. They're the litmus test. I don't know what you call it, litmus test, but they're the wedge state. They do something there, and then it forces the rest of the states to follow on, whether it's milk deregulation or any number of things. And so, yeah, Western Victoria has been developed quite a bit, if you want to use that word, with wind already, and all these things snuck through years ago, and it's only now that really, or not now, but in New South Wales, I suppose, that people are starting to really get upset. In the last 2 or 3 years, prior to that, everything just slipped through pretty much without pushback. But now, as you say, all these groups are set up and we're getting organised. There is pushback, but the rules are different in every state. Like in Queensland, the planning rules are different. And Victoria as well. I think I'm not saying we're lucky in New South Wales, but I think we still have a few more hurdles in New South Wales.
I'll just
Jim
go
Simpson.
back to you, Bill. You've done a fair bit of research on the cost benefits and the life cycle of the different generation of electricity, whether it's renewables or coal or nuclear and that. But I'll just chuck up a page in this first instance to give people a bit of an idea what we're dealing with in relations to replacing a gigawatt of baseload power. And if you could give us a bit of an idea what your interpretation of the sheer volume of projects we need to achieve this replacement of fossil fuels to deliver some sort of renewables baseload power. So I'll just share this at the moment.
Billy, I'll tell you, it's not going to happen.
Well, I'm sure it's not. This is from the Keenan Institute in, I think it's West Virginia. They did studies. This goes back to 2015. And this is the optimum equivalent to 1 gigawatt of dispatchable baseload power. In solar, you need 4.5 gigawatts of nameplate capacity plus 15.75 gigawatts hours of battery or hydro equivalent to replace one gigawatt of coal-fired or nuclear or fossil fuels baseload power. And that equals 45 $200 million 100 megawatt Sierra solar farms, each with 372,036 360 kilowatt solar panels, complete with backup storage equal to 81 Hornsdale power reserves. That would cost $23 billion based on the initial cost of those two projects. In wind, you need 4 gigawatts of nameplated power and 10 gigawatt hours of battery or hydro equivalent. That's equal to $850 million Cooper's Gap wind farms, each with 123 3.75 turbines, complete with backup equivalent to 52 Hornsdale power reserve, which is equal to $17 billion. That means to replace Queensland's 8 gigawatts of coal, we'd have to spend $160 billion for renewables, and that's just the insulation. That's not the connector. That's not the connector.
Right. So, mate, you've answered your own question. The fact is, it's not going to happen.
But it's a lot more complex than that, because you've looked at the life cycle component.
Exactly.
And no one's talking about that, and that's fairly scary. I mean, I think the oldest coal power station went out of action about 15 years ago, and that was in West Virginia, and it ran for 80 years. Yeah. And most coal-fired power stations will run easily 60 odd years before they need updating, replacing, or whatever. So what did your research show in regards to the life cycle of both wind and solar power, and what do we do, and how often do we do the capital cost?
You've got to replace it every 20 years. And the thing is, batteries are even, you have to replace them about every 14 years. So, I mean, this whole thing is just fairyland. It just cannot happen. And the other thing is this, you talked about when you put up that example of the nameplate capacity. Well, the nameplate capacity isn't what it produces. I mean, these things, they have a capacity factor of about 25%. So virtually you've got to say, if you've got nameplate capacity, you've got to have 4 times that to produce the electricity. Whereas you've got a coal-fired power station or a nuclear power station, they operate at 95% to 99%. So the whole thing's just pie in the sky. And you get back to other situations where you've got Tanya Plibersek, who says, she doesn't want to approve a coal mine because of all the threatened species. But every day she signs off on these wind turbines and solar farms. There's a great report which I'll send to you called Green Killing Machines. by a guy from the Global Warming Policy Foundation, report 36. And what he says is everybody says that renewable energy is good. Well, renewable energy is bad because it turns our farmland into industrial complexes, and it doesn't provide the electricity. So we're being driven by ideology and not reality. What is happening now is really insanity. These people who are our politicians, hopefully we get people like Peter Dutton, who has seen the light, and I'd like them to see to release their policy sooner rather than later, in the same way that he went and acted against The Voice. When he started acting against The Voice was, yes, 65%, but when he started putting the arguments together, people started waking up to the fact that this wasn't going to help Aborigines. So he needs to do the same thing with his power policy. Release it now. Start to let the people know that this is the way forward.
One of the other things is
I don't know.
the difference between the people in the regions and the people in the cities is, well, the people in the regions have to live with this stuff, and they see it on their doorstep. And they'll also have to they'll have to eventually face the decommissioning of all these things too, and what's going to happen to the waste. The people in the city, they just have this imagination that there's this nirvana of free energy or cheap energy coming. Do you think it's going to be the costs and the shift of those costs to the consumers and the taxpayers, which is there already, but do you think that's going to be the growth thing that pushes the people in the cities to wake up to this, or are they going to stay oblivious forever because the government will keep providing subsidies or something to artificially control the price?
Mate, it's not all people in the cities. I live in the city. And there's plenty of other people like me who are supporting the people in the country because we know it's insane. And one of the things that we've been pushing for also to try and get the message through to young people is intergenerational equity. What's happening now is the waste can's being kicked down the road. So when we're long gone, it's going to be the young generation of today who's going to clean up the mess. So what we're trying to do is get the message through to people. Don't create the mess in the first place. Sorry, I'll give Grant a go now.
Yeah.
No, look, ideology you're saying is pushing this, and at first glance, yes, it is. I mean, yes, we see the Greens and twisting arms, and then the Labor falling in with them, and then the wet Liberals falling in with them because they don't want to kick up, say anything bad. But behind all that, I just don't know whether it is just ideology. I think the people that are implementing it, the people need to believe they're doing the right thing. So they'll believe that they're doing the right thing, they're saving the planet. And that's what maybe motivates them to do it. But behind the scenes, the people feeding them this information and this whole charade of cheap energy or green energy or whatever it is, I mean, I think they know exactly what they're doing. I don't think the people in Parliament House, made up over the generations have made up this story or pushed this agenda because they woke up one morning and thought we've got to save the planet. I mean, I think they're being fed information and they're being led, they're being supported to push that line and implement that line. And the only way they could implement it was they couldn't say, oh, look, we're going to build all this stuff because it's going to generate, we're going to spend lots of money, and a lot of that's going to flow around in circles and find its way back to our pockets or into foreign companies. And that's what they really want. And your bill's going to go up, but we think it's a great idea and we're going to do it. They're not going to say that. They're going to go, oh, we've got to save the planet and we've got to do all these good things. And then everyone can sleep at night thinking, well, at least I'm saving the planet. I don't like the power bill. But I mean, I think behind it, I don't think it's ideology. I think it comes down to economics. It comes down to money. And this is just the latest way to churn money. Because that's about the only thing these projects are going to do, and this whole scheme is going to do efficiently is churn money around and spend money that us and our children are going to have to pay for or underwrite for the rest of our lives. I don't think they care about the Tomago aluminium plant, the smelter, or anything in industry in Australia really. And by this last act, I don't think they care about farming either. I mean, we've been deindustrialising since the late 60s, early 70s. Once again, change of parliament, change of governments. But the trajectory hasn't changed. It's been deindustrialised the whole time. We changed from the post-World War II development ethos, and then we changed at some point there. Nugget Coombs went and studied at Chicago School of Economics. He was the first Reserve Bank governor, came back, he advised heaps of prime ministers and governments, and basically we went on this Chicago School, sell off all your assets, don't publicly own anything. And ever since then, we've been on this trajectory that gets us to where we are now. And I think that's, it goes back a long way. I don't think they care about industry. I don't think they care about real projects and real development. And they seem to have given up on any sort of equity as well between city, country, or anywhere in Australia, everyone having the same opportunities. It's a real problem. Well, it's not an experiment. I mean, as Bill said, they've tried it overseas in various countries. Germany went down this path at 100 miles an hour, and now they're reopening coal-fired plants. No one's ordering wind turbines in Europe these days. The companies are about to go bust unless Australia puts in a big order. Where does the latest greenfield site to exploit? Where's the latest bunnies? That the government's willing to write a blank check for whatever reason. But yeah, technically, financially, we can't afford it, and it's not going to work anyway. And if you think you're going to save the planet, all the resources, I say they consume more and produce less. And so, from second law of thermodynamics, if you want 10 gigawatt of power, you want to do it the most efficient way you can. But 10 gigawatt from solar and wind and pumped hydro is going to destroy the environment and consume vast amounts of resources in mining, production, transport, all fossil fuel powered, to install that stuff. And it's never going to pay it back. I mean, a levelised cost of energy is a fudge. The Gen Cost report is a fudge. The ISP is a fudge. If you want to destroy the planet or create CO2, if that's your thing, this is the best way to do it. It's just completely arse about it. It's completely counterproductive. But that's the message we've got to get across. How we do it, I don't know.
We've got two things happening, basically, is the cost of these things and the flow down intergenerational debt that we're going to be hit with. But we're also being hit with continuous price rises in electricity. I've got an old graph here. Bill's actually got a new one he's got to send me, but I'll just flick this one up at the moment. This is the graph separating the CPI up until about 2018, and the orange line is all the basket items for the CPI. The blue line is the indexed cost of electricity. And you can see in about 2007, when Mr. Rudker came in and we signed up to renewable targets, we started separating from the general CPI line with electricity, and we've departed it further and further. The only time we came back a little bit was during Abbott's short term, but we've gone ever up since. So
yeah, it's pretty damning, isn't it? When you make that connection.
What's your new graph say, Bill? Is that situation still continuing?
Oh,
absolutely, it's accelerating.
The same one I've got here. Yes.
Yeah, Grant, you most already got the up-to-date one from Jim Stinson.
Yeah, you put the camera back on. I've got it here, Bill. If you want to have a look, I haven't got.
No, you just have to hit the share button if it's on your computer. But we know it's separating and it's fairly drastic.
Bill, I can just make a comment also.
Yep.
As the electricity prices go up, less people are able to afford it. So there gets a tipping point where more and more people won't be paying their electricity bills. I got an email from my electricity provider today saying that if I wanted to, I could set up a small debit on a monthly basis to help me pay my electricity bill. I'm in the fortunate situation where I can pay it. But obviously what they're doing is sending it out to people because people are starting to feel the pinch. And I'll make one other point also. what is propping up the Australian economy? The export of coal and the export of iron ore. So when the price of coal and iron ore goes down, and the government's getting something like about 60 or 70, $80 billion a year from those exports, and you've got people turning around saying, we want to stop the coal exports. Well, if they stop, well, good luck. I mean, what happens to all of the services that people are provided? You know, things like pensions, things like the NDIS, things like payment for education, payment for health. All of those just fall in a hole.
Ambulances.
Exactly. Well, there's also a report today, somebody going through a park in Brisbane, and there's a tent camp there, and this camp's got, you know, full of homeless people. I mean, this is where we're headed in the country. What we're going to have is everybody will be in a tent, or as the guy in Saudi Arabia said, we'll all be going back to the caves.
Well, there's an interesting thing in regards to the COP being done in the one of the most prolific fossil fuel producing countries in the world. It's talking about, you know, supporting nuclear and that. Oh, you've mentioned that the Liberal Party is starting to look at, you know, look like they might be changing the policy, their focus and that. But nuclear power is still a long way off, I think. I don't think it's something that's, you know, just around the corner for us. It's going to take some time, and I think what Labor's relying on is that time lag for anything else to get in the destructive renewables.
Well, I went to the Australian Nuclear Association conference on the 6th of October, and there was a presentation there by a lady called Rita Barnwell from Westinghouse. They've got a 1,000 megawatt modular reactor that they're building around the world now. China's already got about 4 operating, and ordered another 6. They're ordered in Canada. They've got a 300 megawatt small modular reactors that they can roll out. They're rolling out across the world, and they're developing another one at the moment called the Da Vinci, and the Da Vinci is a 5 megawatt reactor. And these 5 megawatt reactors you can put in remote areas, like, you know, remote towns. Put them out at Burke, or put them up at Mount Isa, so you don't have to have all your transmission lines. These are things that are happening now. And there's another one that Bill Gates, I think it's called the Navium reactor. It's a molten salt reactor, a nuclear reactor, and they're building that on a greenfield site in Wyoming, where they've got a coal-fired power station at the moment, and that coal-fired power station will be coming offline. It's been operating for about 70 years, be coming offline in about 4 years, and this other nuclear power station will be operating there. They've got agreement with the town, and the workers in the coal-fired power station, because they're electricity workers, they understand how you know, all the systems work. They'll be then employed in the nuclear power stations. I mean, this is what's happening around the world, and this is what the idiot Bowen has just got his head he's got his head in a bag. You know, these are things that are happening. Like, Australia is part of the world. We're not on another planet, or some people think we are. And the sooner we start adopting these things, the better. And protecting farmers and graziers.
Yeah, well, that's one thing for sure. The footprint of nuclear and fossil fuel power generation is fairly similar. I think the whole 1.4 gigawatt Stanwell power station is sited on just 400 acres, which works out to about 17 square kilometres or something. But that includes, you know, vast areas of land that's not used, but it's just that's its footprint, you know, as far as the land that it owns. But the station itself, and the furnaces and the cooling towers and all the rest of it, and the coal feed occupy less than one square kilometre. So that's the difference in the footprint with fossil fuels and nuclear is that it's not that intrusive on the environment.
1,000 megawatt
Yeah, well,
nuclear power
but we
station,
can come up with that.
18 hectares.
Yeah, I mean, you ask any engineer or most normal people how to fix the energy system or what would you do, and they come to that conclusion fairly quickly. I mean, it doesn't take too much discussion before you realise the best thing would be to replace like for like or with modern coal or with nuclear on the existing sites, and then you don't have to do all this stuff that they're now trying to do. But for some reason, that doesn't even enter into the discussion now. And you wonder why can't you have that discussion? Did they ever ask an engineer, or they just willfully ignore anyone that's worked in the industry or has real knowledge about the subject? As I say, it's just, yeah, you can call it ideological, but I just don't know. I sometimes think the failure isn't a glitch. I think it's a design feature.
The other thing is too, one of the big problems too is the bureaucracy part of our government. There's the people in there are entrenched in this green thing. I don't know much about New South Wales, but we've got an issue up here. We've got the chief of staff for the Premier is a guy called Nick Heath, and his history is he was with the World Wildlife Fund as chairman, the Australian Conservation Society, and then he came into originally the chief of staff for the Ministry of Environment, and he's gone up to be the chief of staff with the Premier, and there's a new person coming in from the same pathway who's now the chief of staff for the Minister of Environment. So we've got a situation now where the bureaucracy, these ideologues now, and it doesn't matter whether it's electricity or agriculture or water or anything, that they're all got that same brush that humans are bad, and everything's got to be natural, or we've got to do everything. We've got to weaponize the environment to stop all this thing. Do you have any idea of what your bureaucrats are like? Are that a lot of them got the same pathway? Because I know they have the similar pathway in West Australia as well.
Yeah, look, I don't know the personalities. I don't know who's actually the staffers for the current crop of politicians. I know the people we deal with Energy Co and what have you are, incredibly frustrating. They don't seem like they're the sharpest tools in the shed, but they're certainly disturbing to deal with if that's what the bureaucracy is, right throughout, and then it's sort of no wonder we're in trouble. But you can look at those conservation groups that you mentioned, and you can go and trace them back. And once again, you trace them back to the climate conferences and everything that was kicked off in the 60s, 70s, by various millionaires back then, billionaires now, I guess. So they've been pushing this agenda for a long time and slowly making inroads and financing these activist conservation groups. It's been a long game they've been playing for whatever reason. And we're just the latest chicken to have the head on the chopping block, really. But you can see it coming. We can trace it back, and people have done so. So it's a big battle, but all we can try and do is dig our heels in and say no and do no and make it as hard for them as we can. I mean, what you're saying about replacing these power stations or something else, I don't. Yeah, it's too late. I mean, they're using that as a threat now that we've got to do this or we're going to run out of power. And anyone knew that when we stopped building power stations 40 years ago that we were going to be in a position like this, especially once we started selling the assets off as well. So it's not a surprise, but they're using that as a stick now that you're going to be responsible because we're going to run out of power. It's going to be because you held up the transition. But yeah, we're already up a blind alley. We're going to be short of power at some point, no matter what we do now. No matter whether we lift the nuclear moratorium, because it's going to take time to do that, time to build anything that's before we can plug it in. And you can already see it. And even if we press on with the solar and wind thing, the cost of doing that, the technical problems with doing that, the lack of minerals and resources to do that means that it's not going to happen either. It's physically impossible. So, you can already see the recognition of this, because the reason I say that they're stopping you connecting gas to your house in Canberra or Melbourne and that'll go to the other states shortly, is they're already quarantining gas to feed gas turbine generators, because they're relatively simple to plop down and plug into the grid to stabilise the grid. And they already recognise there's going to be a problem, and that's their solution, like they've done in South Australia. And there's also on the AMO website, there's ancillary services, all these weird names, ancillary services. And one of them is frequency control ancillary services. And what that means is there's a separate market being run for generators that can help control the frequency, that is voltage variations on the grid, to stabilise the grid. And so they get paid at a different rate. There's a different market there, but it's basically fast response generators like gas turbines, like piston engines, that can stabilise the grid. So they've already got a market for it. They're already quarantining the gas. So they know there's a problem coming, and they're already taking steps to plug those holes.
So they're diesel generators.
Well, they're not diesel. I mean, there's piston, spark ignition gas. Some
Yeah.
are, but there's spark ignition gas piston engines as well. They can run them on gas. There's one in South Australia, I can't remember what it is, but it's a Warsilver or something. It's like a ship's engine. But then most of these are talking about are gas turbines that drive generators of Siemens.
They're fossil fuels.
Well, they are. That's right. Yeah.
Well,
But
there's
that's why. But as I say, you can already see that what they're doing. They're already getting ready to plug these holes that they know are coming.
But there we go. Fossil fuels. I mean, the emissions are plant food. The screening our planet. I'm a skeptic about the climate change stuff anyway. So on that part, but Will, in regards to we've got the situation happening, and we're pulling down some old coal-fired power stations. If they could get over the demonisation of plant food for a while, how long would it take to get a supercritical or a heli coal plant up? You know, one or 2 gigawatts.
Take about 8 years. About 8 years.
Yeah.
But see, they're operating in Japan at the moment. They're operating in South Korea. And of course, the other issue is this: that we're getting our energy. There's 2 energy generation capabilities. One's wind, solar, backed up with batteries, but you've got to recharge the batteries. So you say, well, you know, are we going to get enough power from wind turbines and solar panels to recharge the batteries? And we're getting that from a country that people are talking about is a threat, as opposed to getting the technology from our allies, that's small modular reactors and ultra-supercritical coal-fired power stations, and building them here in Australia so that we have energy security. And energy security is national security. So you've got to ask yourself the question, where are these geniuses? What are they thinking? You know, we want to get something that we've got to replace every 20 years from somebody who wants to do us harm, or get these other ones that are going to operate for 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 years from our allies. I mean, you know, a lot of these people must be brain dead. And the other thing is we're destroying the environment to save the environment. As you say, Bill, you know, the trees are things that convert carbon dioxide into oxygen and retain the carbon within the trees. So what they do is they cut down tens of thousands of trees to put up wind turbines. You know, I mean, you couldn't invent this. This is fact is stranger than fiction, that's for sure.
Oh well, I think I think the biomass thing's a bit of a Furby too. I mean, they cut down all these forests near the Appalachian Mountains in West Virginia and that, wood chip it and pelletise it and send it over to Britain to DAX to burn in their biofuel. So how does that work out? You know, the cost of felling a tree, pelletising it, shipping it across the Atlantic Ocean, and then burning the bloody thing.
That's right. The European Union says that's green energy.
It's
all green when they chop the trees down. The trees were green.
It's all accounting. It's not engineering. It's all about the accounting and the financial, incentives or whatever you want to call them. But it's all financial skullduggery in the accounting system. It's not about saving the planet. And it's not about generating.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Efficient power. No, I mean, and I'm okay. Bill's older than me by a bit, and the other Bill, I'm not sure, maybe similar, but I don't think you can listen to anything these people say and take it seriously. And usually the truth is 100% the opposite of what they say. Like
Exactly.
This whole renewable stuff is completely more destructive to the environment than sticking with coal or building nuclear. But they push it as green, but the results are exactly the opposite. And pelletizing your timber to burn and calling it green it's completely counterproductive. That seems to go with so many policies and stuff that's rammed down our throat these days. Is everything they say, you can virtually turn it around 100%, and that'll be the outcome. That'll be the result. But
Exactly.
I'm getting more and more cynical every year, but there seems to be more and more evidence every year as well. And like the green hydrogen, sorry, Bill, the green hydrogen, like the studies about the resources replied. I mean, there's a 300 megawatt gas turbine generator powered by gas. You get 300 megawatt of power 24/7. To run that on green hydrogen, you can't replace it with 300 megawatt of solar panels. If people have done the calculations, you need 16 times the number of solar panels to produce the hydrogen to run the gas plant, because of the lack of efficiency and the dispatch factor, and you got to, you need 16 times the solar panels to run that gas turbine on green hydrogen. So how green is hydrogen? It's completely counterproductive. It's stupid. But why are we doing it? And how do you cut through to the technical details when, as soon as you get anywhere, you don't even get anywhere, but as soon as you start this conversation, you get shouted at and shut down as being a climate change denier, and everyone in your street will shun you virtually because they've all been hoodwinked. It's incredibly hard to get to the technical discussion, the stuff that you've put up tonight, the stuff that Bill's researched, and I've read numerous papers saying the same thing, but you never even get to that point of the discussion.
Well, there's a couple of things. That Westinghouse have done a study with their most efficient turbines, gas turbines, and they say that the amount of energy you use to produce hydrogen means that you get 15% of the energy from the hydrogen. So in other words, you use 100% of energy to produce the hydrogen, and that produces 15% of energy. So I mean, you don't have to be too bright to work out that, that's stupidity. I'll just make one further comment. It's not net zero, it's net scammo. And remember the Y2K bug. Now, the Y2K bug, as soon as we got to 12 midnight on the 31st of December 1999, planes didn't fall out of the sky, the banking system didn't collapse. Everybody says, oh, that was a scam. The thing they've got at the moment, there's no end to it. They say we're going to reduce the temperatures in 100 years' time. So the whole thing
is one scam after another.
It's a scam now. It's just all about the money, but there's no end date to it.
I think one of the other problems is the faces of this sometimes. Like you had Cannon Brooks, who made a fortune selling his software business, and you've had Twiggy Forrest with his iron ore and his mateship with China. They're the faces of some of these renewable projects and hydrogen and stuff. And a lot of people take stock of that. They just get on there and take a 10-second news grab, and people think, oh yeah, it must be good because they're involved. But then you look at Cannon Brooks, the big solar thing for Northern Territory and shipping bloody energy across to Singapore. I mean, gee whiz, anyone with a modicum of sense would have worked out. You've got to send it 4,000 kilometres by undersea cable. That's pretty daunting and costly, and you got to contract it to provide it at the time, 24/7 to them. What happens if anything goes wrong? What's the cost to the person supplying it? What's the comeback? And you got Twiggy, going along about hydrogen, and he's going to make all these electrolyzers, but they don't do anything unless there's government money in it somewhere, and that's the scary part.
Hey, Billy, I've got a project that Cannon Brooks could get onto. We put up all the wind turbines in Antarctica and then put a cable from Antarctica up to Australia.
Yeah, they'll sit there. All the blades will drop off because of the ice.
Well, you might upset the penguins. That's the only thing.
As long as somebody else pays for it.
I think this is the thing we've got to deal with, is that there's fairly high profile people in a lot of these things, invested or trying to make money out of them, and people who from the scientific world who have got good standing in that and make good arguments. They're dismissed, and that's something that really gets up my nose, that they can the media and the politicians can dismiss eminent people with heaps and heaps of knowledge, heaps of science background, and it doesn't matter whether it's with renewable energy or COVID or something like that, but they can selectively decide who's going to be mouthpieces for them and who's going to be shut up.
I think people are wising up to that a bit. I mean, I think COVID probably opened a few people's eyes, but when you see that attitude, when you see that full court press of the media and the talking heads, the politicians, all on the one song sheet, almost word for word, the fix is in. And I think people are aware of that. And I'd like to be able to capitalise on that with this as well, as where people know they're going to get done over if we go this route. So hopefully they won't let that happen. That's what I'm hoping. I guess that's my hope, is that people's eyes are up a bit wider than they were, and people will just dig their heels in and say no. And fundamentally, they can't come after us all, and they can't force us all. But some of us are going to get the chop in the meantime, unfortunately.
Yeah, just going forward, there was Barnaby stood up at the Reckless Renewables rally in Sydney and suggested that there's going to be a further rally down in Canberra in February. So is that likely to happen? Is that something that's planned, and how do you think that will go?
Yeah, we are planning it on the 6th of Feb, just because that was the first week sitting back, and the second week they went and had committees or something. So we have tried to nail that date down, and we've started planning. We're going to just sort of more expand on the theme I think we had in Sydney, and obviously it'll have a different theme, a different feel, I think, because we've got a lot more rural people there than we had in Sydney. But it all depends on many factors. But yes, we are planning, but the shape it takes, we're not, we haven't nailed everything down yet.
I suppose the thing is, too, Canberra Central between Victoria and Melbourne and Sydney, hopefully you'll get a big number of people from what we call the Mexicans, the Victorians and that, come up to Canberra, because it's not such a long jaunt. Hopefully you get some diverse crowds, and also lock in some good speakers for that event.
Well, we had a lot of interest in Sydney. In the last week or 10 days, people were coming out of the woodwork, and also not the mainstream media, but the media interest also increased. At some point, a lot of people, people decided that it had sort of reached critical mass and they had to be involved with it, or they wanted to be involved with it. And so I'm hoping that carries through to Canberra, and there'll be a lot more interest. I mean, the HumeLink project is right on their doorstep, and there's a lot of unhappy people with the HumeLink. Snowy's right on their doorstep, and that's just being, one cock up after another. And then the Riverina Renewable Energy Zone as well. There's a lot of people around the Wagga and the Riverina that they've got the VNI and the VNI West, and they've got solar panels. So it'll be a lot handier to a lot of those people. So hopefully we'll get a lot, and also Victorians coming up. It's going to be hard for the Queenslanders more. It's probably going to be hard to get representation there. But Senator Roberts and Renick and those people have been active in this space already. So hopefully they'll be involved as well.
Well, I suppose because they're sitting, those people will be available to be speakers and that, and some of those people draw their own crowds anyway, which helps.
Yeah, I think so. They've got a real following. Yeah, because they're the
Hey,
only
Billy.
people, new politicians that seem to talk sense.
Billy, yeah, look, people like Grant, and there's so many other people in the country. All they want to do is go out and farm. They want to grow crops, or they want to grow beef. And they don't want to be involved in this sort of bloody situation where we've got to continue to fight against politicians and overseas countries companies that want to destroy the countryside. So that's where I'm coming from, and quite a few of us in the city, to help the people in the country, to take a bit of the load off them by helping to put in objections, etc., and doing a bit of the background work.
Or you could start campaigning for wind turbines in Sydney Harbour.
Well, put them on North Head and South Head, Manly Beach.
We floated that idea. I think yes, that's right. I think they've got to go from Palm Beach to Warringah, and Bondi and all those teal seats. I mean, they should have to bear some of the benefits of these excellent things, and I'm sure they'll have social license. I mean, there shouldn't be any pushback there whatsoever, you'd imagine.
No,
Exactly.
They should be out there cheering it on. I mean, here's the rub. I'm up in Cairns, and a few years ago, there was Windy Hill was the first test farm. I mean, that was just a tin pot sort of thing. And the first farm went in was Emerald Hill.
Mount Emerald.
Now, that a lot of people up here, especially from the conservationists and that, cheered that on. Like, great, we're seeing protection of our environment and all this sort of stuff. Then come along Caban, and they sort of, yeah, well, it's only 28 turbines. And then comes Chilumban, supposedly going to be 95 turbines. And then all of a sudden, a lot of these people who are cheering it on in the first instance sort of say, whoops, this ain't good. We sort of want to sort of arc up about this. But the trouble is, it was only a small percentage of the people who arced up. We've still got those deep-seated green type conservationists who won't complain about the damage being done. They just tick the box in regards, well, it's saving the planet, and they don't care about the local environment. So it really splits the original group that sort of cheered it on. So it's interesting times.
Do you know Stephen Nowakowski?
Yeah, I know
Yes.
Steve. I saw him again about 2 weeks ago at a meeting.
Well, he was down at the rally.
Yeah. Now
He
he does
spoke at the rally.
work for you over the Chilumban.
Yes. No, he does a really good job. Yeah, I think the green groups, again, I think they're on the nose, even with them, for the reasons you stated, within their own, their own fraternity now. I think the organised green groups are dead in the water. They've lost their credibility with their grassroots people. It's going to take a while for them to change their view 100%. But again, it's a bit like organised religion, I think. I think a lot of people have seen it for what it is and aren't real happy with it. And I think it's going to be the death knell of those big organised green groups. There'll be a grassroots green group that will rise in opposition to the corporate green groups.
We might start one, Grant.
Well,
Yeah, hug a tree.
We've gone over the hour. We'd like to wrap it up here and just give us a bit of rundown what you're going to do for the next at least 3 or 4 months to get to the next Reckless Renewables rally, plus the other things on the side that you're doing locally, especially you, Grant, in your local community. So if you just give us a bit of an idea what you do.
Last night I went out to Mendoran, which is a little village west of here, about an hour's drive. And this is in the northwest, towards the northwest area of the res. We've had a meeting a couple of weeks ago at Binnaway, which is further north. There's no major power lines planned out there at the moment, but they are sketched in on some of the New South Wales res maps. And so we're trying to get out to those areas that don't have a lot of projects mapped out yet. we're trying to get ahead of them and informing the landowners and the townspeople of what might be coming their way by showing what's happening down here and what the plans are, because none of this information goes to those areas. You know, the proponents sneak out there, they sign up a few hosts on the sly, confidentiality agreements, and then they have a town meeting and they announce it as a fait accompli, and it's a job done. So we're trying to get out there ahead of the proponents before they sign people up. I've got to appear before an independent planning commission panel tomorrow for a wind farm down at Bowman's Creek, down the Hunter Valley. So there's all these, unfortunately, mule work type things that need to be done because there's projects running all the time, like we talked about earlier. And besides that, we're planning the rally. But all these, the rally is sort of like an inflection point or a key point to make. But they're just steps on the way. I mean, I don't expect any conclusion from the Sydney rally. I don't expect any conclusion from the Canberra rally. They're just steps on the way. And it's going to be a long haul, and we're in it for the long haul. And we're going to cause as much, hold-ups and damage, if you like, as we can, so they don't get a free ride.
Well, I
be
think
ungovernable.
One of the things is, I suppose, we saw with The Voice how Sky News helped that argument. And now with Sky News, we're quite fortunate. We get Sky News regional, which is free to air. So we now get a lot of information and news stories that we probably wouldn't get from interstate by normal services. I mean, point in case was the West Australian Indigenous Cultural and Heritage Act. That would have only probably been somewhere page 9, a little item maybe in the Cairns News, a couple of lines, and we wouldn't take any notice. But the fact that Sky News picked it up and Tony Seabrook got interviewed on it numerous times, that played out well across the nation and hopefully people like Sky News pick up on this and push the story
my link's falling over.
and get it out there for all of us, because that'd be a major benefit for the cause.
Grant's Links drop down. Sky Mesh has taken control.
Okay. If you just want to wind up there, Bill, in regards to your activities for the next few months and that.
Well, in the next couple of weeks, I'll be joining the family for Christmas, which will be very good. And we'll keep up the research and also keep the politicians honest. We keep communicating with the 72 groups from Queensland, New South Wales, Victoria, Tasmania and South Australia. There is a group in Victoria that you mentioned before. It's called Wind Farm Living, and there's a lady called Viva Lynn.
Oh, she's good.
She does great work pushing back against the Victorian Environmental Planning Authority.
Sky News has been really so.
So that's what we'll be doing, and organising for Canberra on the 6th. We'll be having a Zoom meeting tomorrow week with various groups, just to get up to speed with where they're at and feedback from the rally. So, and to plan going forward.
Well, the other thing is, hopefully the cat is going to be thrown amongst the pigeons from COP28, and there will be hopefully some fallout on the Bowen plan, the Bowen Blackout plan. We can only hope, but they're the things we want all sorts of obstacles to be thrown up in front of them. And show them up to what they are.
Well, there is a guy called Robert Parker who has been going around Australia talking about nuclear energy. He worked for the nuclear plant down at Lucas Heights, and he's very much supportive of nuclear, and we'll be getting him at our local branch, Liberal Party branch, in late January, to start educating the people about the benefits of nuclear energy.
I think the other thing there, that young Will Shackle, or what his name is, from
Yeah.
Nuclear for Australia, although he's only a young pup, the media attention given to him and his messaging has been quite remarkable. Not only on Sky News, but managed to get in there on Q&A and things like that, and sort of really make Bowen look like an idiot.
Exactly.
So that all adds to the profile of the whole conversation, and that's good to see, I think.
Exactly.
Okay, then look, we'll wrap it up there. I'm not sure if Grant's got to make a reappearance. But look, Bill, thanks very much. Or if you can just stay on the line for a second, I'll just wrap this up and introduce next week's shows. Okay, if you enjoyed this show, please like, share, and subscribe to our Facebook page and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Next week, we've got 2 episodes. Monday, we'll be talking to Ken Jury. He's an investigative reporter, and he's done a lot of research on the lower Murray and the lakes and the Coorong in regards to where it gets all its pollution from and acidity. Which is and sort of points out that it doesn't matter how much water you flush down the Murray, you ain't going to fix it, because that's not the source of the problem. And also on Thursday, we'll be talking to Scott Hargrave from the Australian Public Affairs, Institute of Public Affairs. So join us next week for those 2 episodes. Thank you.